I was a little disappointed in the lack of a clear statement or the lack of direction when it comes to pensions. In the past 6 months, a lot of publications around the world, the OECD, many other major organizations from the United Nations and others, have talked a lot about pensions and, more importantly, pension security, not just from the public aspect of pensions, when we talk about our CPP, our OAS, as well as a guaranteed income supplement, vital tools to keep many people above poverty or certainly enjoy their senior years from age 60 and onwards. But there is a great amount of insecurity when it comes to the future security of pensions in many respects because of the situation that we have that is worldwide. My colleagues talked about the worldwide recession, and I agree with them. It was a worldwide recession that we have not seen in quite some time, and for most people involved in the financial markets, they've not seen it either. So we found ourselves in a situation that many were surprised, shocked, and government policy followed suit. In many cases, short-term measures, but the problem is now as we pull out of the short-term measures, we have to focus on what is long-term sustainability for our social fabric net. And the problem with that is, the problem with the social fabric that we've created in this country in this particular situation is it seems as if all the emphasis lately has been on the short-term policy measures. Now, for some of them, that's fantastic. It is a necessary move for governments to use for the sake of allowing people to get from this point to point B, which is a month from now, 2 months from now, whatever it may be, certainly for the next 2 or 3 years. But if you look at all these studies, something is coming this way that may provide a substantial amount of policy talk, thought, and deliberation. Certainly, and this House and this nation is not immune to that conversation. We too will find ourselves in a conversation about security of our own pensions that is going to take a lot of deliberation, a lot of sacrifices, and for all parties in this House and any future parties that may come along, it is going to be a discussion that everybody has to act with the utmost responsibility. I'll give you an example. Let's return to my riding for just one moment. Grand Falls, Windsor. We had the Grand Falls division of Abitibi-Bowater shut down. 700 jobs directly, well over 1,100 jobs indirectly, a devastating effect. Now, the economy within the Exploits Valley, which Grand Falls, Windsor exists, has weathered the storm for now. Now, I would like to say that we're doing well with this in the Exploits Valley. We've handled it well, but we're not out of the woods yet, pardon the expression. Because in this particular situation, it's a 100-year-old establishment. I wouldn't even call it a mill. I call it an establishment that created the communities, not just one, but created, I would say, upwards of over 40 communities existing in logging, papermaking, and all the suppliers and all the workers in that particular mill was really the lifeblood for an entire community, valley, and entire region of central Newfoundland and Labrador. And it was really, really compelling. But after 100 years, the doors have been shut. No one person is to blame for this. No one individual, no one organization is to blame. It's world markets, it's a struggling economy, and in many respects, it's cutthroat competition from others as the markets decline. And we have lost a great amount of individuals who have gone elsewhere, a lot of skills, a lot of high-paying jobs. The average salary for someone in a mill such as this is extremely high. It's the type of salary that helps support families. You know, the union movement. In my hometown, it was really the genesis of the Federation of Labor in Newfoundland and Labrador was in Grand Falls, Windsor, because of that mill. And they created a community, not just from that mill, but from the unions involved, from the community groups involved, and therefore we find ourselves at a crossroads. This isn't easy. Right now we've done fairly well, but we're not out of the woods. And this is going to be a struggle that we go through over the next 2 or 3 years. And one of the reasons why I bring that up is because for several reasons, it's pensions is a part of economic development. Now, I hope that doesn't serve as a shocker to a lot of people, but it does. It's a vanguard for economic development in someone in a small community. How big is Grand Falls, Windsor? I'm glad you asked. It's just over 13,000 people. It's not a lot of people, really. But the entire region helps support 30, 40,000 people. All these communities, 170 communities in my riding. The largest community is 13,000. Let's face it, I'm as rural can get, maybe with the exception of Nunavut. But nonetheless, you get the idea. When I say pensions, there are people that were working at the mill that recently, as of last year, saw a decrease in their pension value by up to 30%. Now, if you're getting from your pension and you're 78 years old, 79 years old, and your pension is decreased by 30%, and you have to support a large home, a two-story home, and it costs about $900 to $1,000 a month to heat, and you lost 25% of your pension, that's a lot. And I use all those little factors because the gentleman I describe is my father. And he was never thought he'd be in a situation where he had to look at 30% of the value of his defined benefit pension to be less than 30%. So we come to a house like this, and I don't say this because I'm his son, but because I'm also his member of parliament. And there are other fathers with sons who look to me as well, and I say, here are a couple measures. And I applaud the party to my left here, pardon the expression, the NDP, and for the bills that they have put forward, and there are some that we have as well. When you talk about the Bankruptcy Insolvency Act, as well as looking at the insecure creditor situation. I don't think these are large, expensive measures by which that we need to look at this, and I think some of those could have been covered off a little more than what the government has recently done. So I'm not here to contradict and say everything that you just did was wrong. I'm just here to say let's raise the bar on this issue, because if we don't, we will get caught. And unfortunately, with the amount of people in this country who are seniors, we suffer what's called crowded out. That's one of the crowding out mechanism. One of the many political scientists use that when it comes to childcare, daycare, healthcare, aboriginals, the fishery, forestry, agriculture. The size by which that this issue will become when it comes to pensions may crowd out others. And let's face it, what was then was a surplus. What is now is a deficit. Many numbers thrown around, but we're certainly over 50 billion. And we have to deal with that as well. So I would ask my colleagues to raise the bar when it comes to pensions. Let's not look at condemning wholeheartedly everybody's opinion on when it comes to pensions. Let's take a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and a little bit of this to reach a critical mass by which our seniors can live. So in my response from the speech from the throne, I throw a challenge out, and I sincerely ask the House to help us with this issue of pensions and pension security. 2010 showed no increase in OAS or GIS support for seniors in poverty, no increase in CPP, or any measures to deal with defined benefit pensions. There are defined benefits, but now most places are turning to defined contributions. Essentially what that means is the security, remember that 79-year-old man I spoke of? Well, if he was under defined contribution, the security, the risk of his pension relies with him and him alone. That's why measures introduced by the Liberal Party, which I fully endorse, looks at ways of supplementing our CPP, because it is one of the best managed programs in this country, and for good reason. So therefore, maybe we should use that as a mechanism by which that we can help people get out of poverty. I also want to move on now to other issues that pertain to the region. I mentioned pensions as a vanguard for economic development. There are other areas of economic development as well. And one of the more successful ones has been an organization known as ACOA, or we call it ACOA. Here in Ottawa, you would know it as the Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency. What we need from ACOA now is a vision. But the problem with the recent budget was that it was a year-over-year expense of only $19 million in the two vital programs, innovation as well as a communities fund. Now, we can argue about dollar amounts all day, but the problem is this: a year-over-year addition will give you $19 million this year. As for next year, stay tuned. The problem with that is it doesn't compel our bureaucrats in ACOA and other places to have a vision that is compelling enough to look at a 5-year plan. That's the problem. In the early part of this decade, in early 2000, 2001, we came out with a program that allowed ACOA to do that, to create programs that were visionary but 5 years out. Once again, 5 years out. Now we're year over year, and it's not helping matters for this particular organization.